Live from the local station, News 4 Jax starts now.
New at noon for the first time, we see how the gunman got into the Texas elementary school. Authorities in Uvalde say the 18-year-old spent nearly an hour barricaded in a classroom, and people are asking why so long. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. Authorities want to know more about the role a school resource officer played in trying to stop the teenager from getting inside. Meantime, a memorial has been set up for those who survived and called classmates and heroes. Lawmakers nationwide are now calling for gun legislation to stop what they call a growing epidemic. Mike Valerio is at the school. He has more on the investigation and efforts to try and stop the shooter. Mike, what is the latest?
Well, the latest edition of the local paper is out at this hour. The entire front page in black, minus the date of the massacre. And if we flip over to the back side with the main headline for this story, city's soul crushed. This as more families are preparing for funerals.
A heartbroken community embracing one another. The notes of Amazing Grace, the soundtrack to their pain. Hundreds gathered at a vigil Wednesday night to mourn the 21 lives lost in the massacre at Robb Elementary School. Today, we're learning who some of them were. Teachers Eva Morales and Irma Garcia, along with their students. Eliana Cruz Torres, Eliana Eli Garcia, Tess Marie Mata, Lexi Rubio, Nave Alisa Bravo, Jose Flores Jr., Annabel Guadalupe Rodriguez, whose family says she was killed along with her cousin, whose name has not been released. Uzziah Garcia, Javier Lopez, and Amory Joe Garza, whose father, a medic and one of the first responders that day, said he found out his daughter was killed from her best friend.
She was so sweet, Mr. Cooper. She was the sweetest little girl who did nothing wrong. She listened to her mom and dad. She always brushed her teeth. She was creative. She made things for us. She never got in trouble in school. Like, I just want to know what she did to be a victim.
We're also hearing from some of those young survivors who will have to live with these memories forever.
All we saw were thousands of police and Border Patrol coming into the cafeteria. And we were all hiding behind the stage in the cafeteria when it happened.
And the trauma and trepidation are certainly seemingly spreading here across Texas. We have a city about 4.5 miles, or I should say 4.5 hours south of here in Donna, that has canceled classes for the rest of the week because what school officials call a credible threat of violence. That is the latest reporting here in Uvalde. I'm Mike Valerio. Back to you.
When you put a face on those who died, it makes things even more heartbreaking, if that is possible. Here are some of the 19 students and 2 teachers who were killed in the shooting. Many of the students were in 4th grade. They would have been celebrating the end of the school year today, a day they'd be signing yearbooks and saying, "See you next year." Now it's a year they'll never see. More than a dozen other students were injured in that attack. Some were taken to San Antonio's University Hospital. 3 of the students underwent surgery and were so badly hurt, their injuries so severe, they will likely need more surgery.
Broadly speaking, we were treating destructive wounds. And what that means is that there were large areas of tissue missing from the body. And they required emergency surgery because there was significant blood loss.
Dr. Lau says a 10-year-old as well as a 66-year-old woman. Her team is treating her on the mend and have been upgraded from critical to serious condition. The other 2 kids are now both in good condition. So imagine seeing things unfold. Some students who survived talked about the horror of seeing that 18-year-old gunman stalking the school's hallways. Those who were in the classroom next door saw him walk by. Their teacher shouted, "He has a gun." The gunman barricaded himself in the room where the carnage occurred for more than an hour. One student says he and 4 others hid under a table. They put a cloth over that table. Others inside the school heard all the confusion, but they really had no idea what was going on.
Everybody was scared. We were all panicking because we didn't know what was really happening.
say the two teachers who lost their lives, Irma Garcia and Eva Morales, saved their lives. One student says the two went in front of his classmates to help shield them from the violence. The pair had been teaching together for the past 5 years at Robb Elementary. Now there's a memorial in front of the school for the 21 who lost their lives. Each cross includes the names of a victim. In the chaos of the day inside, witnesses say loved ones were urging police outside to go in and try and do more. Parents thought about going in themselves to try and do anything to help. Now, authorities add a school district security officer outside the school encountered the shooter. This is new video just released of the gunman going inside the school. Police say he entered through an unlocked door in the back while carrying a gun and a backpack. That's when he met with an initial resource officer who was injured. Texas Department of Public Safety is now working to learn more about that encounter.
We know right now, and again, everything is still preliminary. We're still trying to establish what security measures were in place. We do know for a fact that the shooter was able to make entry into that school unimpeded, as far as there was no type of security, as far as locking mechanisms at that initial doorway. So we're trying to establish exactly what were the policies, what were the procedures for the school. So we're working closely with the school district, with the superintendents, to see what the policies were in place. But also one thing I want to add too, with that initial school resource officer, once we're able to corroborate exactly what was his role, we do know for a fact that the shooter was carrying a backpack prior to entering the school. And that backpack was left at the doorway prior to entering. So we know that backpack contained numerous magazines, numerous rounds of ammunition. So that ammo could have been used to carry out potential killings inside that school. So that's one key point that I want to point out, that that backpack was left behind.
Now, apparently, the 18-year-old legally bought two AR-style rifles on 2 different days last week, came days just after his 18th birthday. According to the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, 7 of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history happened in the past decade. 4 of those, including Uvalde, happened in Texas. State lawmakers last year passed a law loosening gun rights by allowing people to carry without a license or training. It is a similar measure to one Governor DeSantis has called for here in Florida. He wants a law called constitutional carry. Now, as a result of what happened in Texas, Florida's Governor, Ron DeSantis, is reviewing a bill that would set a deadline for training school employees. The school safety bill is an extension of a training required in the wake of the Parkland shooting. In March 2018, lawmakers passed a safety measure that would require all school employees get youth mental health awareness and assistance training, but there was no deadline. This new measure calls for at least 80% of school employees in every district to be trained by July 1st of next year and every year thereafter. Now, the shooting in Uvalde has spurred a national conversation about gun control. Students and youth organizers with March for Our Lives are now planning a protest, including a march on the nation's capital. From June 7th through the 10th, the group will push for universal background checks. March for Our Lives is a youth-led movement created in the wake of the Parkland shooting. It has grown to include several other groups nationwide. Mass shootings have impacted students from Parkland to Sandy Hook. Survivors say they feel for the students in Uvalde who now live in constant fear. One Sandy Hook survivor explains the conversations she has with roommates and has 10 years later.
I have to tell them that I have to leave a light on. I have to sleep with some sort of light so there's no dark, because I think I see a shooter in the shadows. I have to sleep with a pillow behind my back because I'm afraid that a shooter's going to get me where I can't see them 10 years later. 10 years later, I still feel that. And sometimes I wake up abruptly in the middle of the night because I don't feel that pillow anymore, or I have a flashback or something, and it's all very real to me. It's very real to anyone who's gone through a shooting. It doesn't go away, and I don't think that's realized by a lot of people.
Typical symptoms of PTSD. President Biden expected to travel to Uvalde in the coming days. No exact date set yet. Meantime, lawmakers are working on developing a bipartisan compromise when it comes to gun control legislation. Locally, schools throughout Northeast Florida are increasing security in the final days of this academic year. Duval ends school this week, St. Johns County next. At 5:30 tonight, we delve deeper into the Guardian program. It's a school resource officer system in place in Bradford County. Join us for that tonight at 5:30. On tap today, Southern Baptist Convention leaders expected to publish a list of ministers accused of sexual misconduct. The organization perpetuated a cycle of abuse for 2 decades by ignoring reports of sexual abuse and dismissing recommendations of reform. The nearly 300-page document from the Guidepost Solutions investigative firm contains explosive details about how the nation's largest Protestant denomination responded to a growing sexual abuse crisis within its ranks since several top leaders resigned and the body under interim leadership met earlier this week to discuss that report. Governor Ron DeSantis should be receiving a bill that could affect several buildings in Duval County. Bill states that buildings are to be inspected and recertified if they're more than 30 years old or 25 years if the building's located within 3 miles of the coast. After this initial process is complete, it should be done again every decade. Bill will also make sure that money for necessary repairs is available to building managers. Legislation is being introduced to help avoid an incident like the Surfside condo collapse that happened last June in Miami. Combating the home insurance crisis, 2 bills aimed at saving you money are now headed to the governor's desk. One focusing on the cost of roof damage claims and homeowners' struggles to find affordable new insurance after being dropped by their insurance companies. Under the new measures, insurance policies would have to include new deductibles for roof damage. The deductible amounts would be 2% of the overall insured value of homes. That means if you own a $300,000 home, your deductible would be $6,000. Deductibles, however, would not be charged for hurricane damage or in a situation where perhaps a tree falls on your home. Volunteers are planting flags at the Jacksonville National Cemetery. Families of all ages, along with active members of the military, are out helping. People arrived early this morning to try and plant some 22,000 flags at the grave sites there. Organizers say the number of servicemen and women who are buried there sadly continues to grow. One dad who brought his daughter to help place those flags says it's important to share this tradition with future generations.
Another staple of our country, that this should be taught in school to give reverence and honor those who came before us, that served, and hopefully it'll inspire other people to pick up the torch and serve as well.
Saturday's Memorial Day observance starts at 9:30 at the Jacksonville National Cemetery. It's out there on Lanny Road, and it is, of course, open to the public. Amazon striking down a proposal meant to help workers. The policy changes it would have created that have some warehouse employees furious. Taking a live look at JAX. If you're flying this Memorial Day holiday weekend, this is the busiest day to fly. When you should hit the roads if you want to beat the traffic.